You're on right now.
Joe Gotchy said to be sure and stop by and tell him this morning about the Foss Company and as it was in the old days. And so I promised him I would stop by and tell him about Andrew Foss and his wife climbing up the beach at Salmon Beach and owning the beach and renting out boats for 50 cents a day. And Tom Manson worked with them all those years. And Tom's been on my place for the last 17 years, so I wanted Tom to have a little time to talk on this tape and tell you about Andrew Foss and his wife. But Joe has insisted I tell him about Foss Company and how successful they were in those days. 1929 and 1939 and 1949, they went fast. I was just a boy and was lucky enough to know all of the old-timers at Foss and have the picture. Joe didn't need me to come by and talk about it because it's November 17th today, and November 7th, 52 years ago, the bridge fell. And I was married living on Sunset, and that morning I woke up and I said, gee, when I worked with Art Wickstrom on Rosedale, we almost drowned in front of Day Island with 6-foot waves and a 100-mile wind and a 11-foot run-in on the tide. And that day it was a big run-in and a 40-mile wind, and I said, gee, that is really going to be something to see what happens today. And I looked from our house, and the bridge was dancing, and you could really see the waves at Day Island. So I got downtown and filled my tank at the Arco station on 11th and M, and it was getting to be around 10:30 on my ton-and-a-half truck when I hit the bridge. And Dolph Eastwood was the toll collector, and he said, pull your truck over. I said, hell, I got to go clear to Kingston. The Venice boys up there want to load, and I got to get up there today. So I can't, anyway, I pulled over, and 2 girls went through the check stand, and he charged them 10 cents each to walk. And I said, hell, you can't charge them for that thing, Dolph, look at it. And he says, well, a lot of the bridges up there, we're going to collect. And I said, Dolph, you got to be kidding. And then what do you want? He said, I'm going to buy the store at Manchester. I said, buy the damn thing. It's a good idea, and it's a good store, and you'll make nothing but money. Dolph bought the store and had a good, successful business there. When I got to the top of the bridge, while I was talking to him, I saw a Stroh's hay truck go by and trailer. And I thought, man, oh man, look at this load of hay going across. And I was right behind him. And when I got to the top, my ton-and-a-half truck went from one curb to the other to get across. And I thought, my gosh, I don't think there'll ever be a way that I can go back over this thing tonight. And when I got to the other side, Merle Strom and all the guys were coming to the bridge 100 miles an hour to watch it fall. And I was just lucky enough to get the hell out of there, go clear to Kingston, and I took the Edmonds ferry home that night. What else can I tell you, Joe, about the bridge on November 7th? Nothing else, I don't think.
Well, I'll tell you, that was really an account that I have never heard before. I never even realized it happened.
And the interesting thing about the bridge as well was that the man who supplied the fuel oil was Stutz. And he was a wonderful Masonic guy that everybody loved at Gig Harbor. And the day that they called and said, you got to bring fuel today, it's Saturday, and he said, no, not today, because I have to go to the Husky game. I have Husky tickets. And they said, no way. If you will bring a load of fuel up today, we will be the first guy to go across the Narrows Bridge without any sides or anything. And Stutz delivered the fuel and was the first guy to go across the bridge without any sides or anything on it. So Stutz Fuel Company was the original guy to go across.
Well, that was the new bridge now.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that was the bridge you're talking about.
The old bridge?
The old bridge.
Is that right? I never heard that before.
And Stutz was, if he was living, he could tell you that he was the first guy to go across. And the only reason he did was because they needed a load of fuel that day, and he had to deliver. And all the stories of Foss Company are interesting, Joe, and anything you want to know about any of those fellas, they're all around. George Maddock died, but the rest of them are all alive, and they're going to meet December the 11th at Ivan's on the River Road, and Drew Foss will be there.
Did George Maddox have a son now, or is that the one?
David is his son, and he works on the tug.
That's the one that was port captain, do you think?
David, no.
It was George then.
I don't know who that was, but I know that Drew was on the Justine, which is the first boat in the picture that was captured by the Japs on December 7th in Guam. And that's another another story that's very interesting. Someday that story will be printed too, I hope. Anything else, Joe, that you think of that you want to hear about?
Well, there is something that I want to ask you.
Yeah.
Now, Foss changed hands some time back. That outfit in Moy, I think, took it over. Well, now is it? They don't have it now.
No, the Foss Company has gone through a number of hands since those days, and the interesting thing of it is that the tug part of it again is back in Foss's hands.
Well, that's what I thought you told me before.
And they say that Drew is in charge, and it's still a profitable tugboat company. So let's get the facts, which we will get on December the 11th at Ivans on the River Road.
Well, that really is. It's a good deal that Drew is back in there again.
Oh,
anyway.
yeah.
Was he hard to persuade to do that, I wonder?
Oh, I would imagine he would be, because he's definitely been a lot of the tugboat business for many, many years. Billy Derby was one of his guys that run the Diamond B, and Jack Sweeney, of course, was your old friend on the Tyee and the 9 and the Tacoma, and the 12 was Ray Myers, and Sammy Emerson was the best one of them all. He was on the Lethea, and I worked on the Tyee with Sweeney and Jerry Sweeney, and it was really fun. And Billy Case's brother worked with him, and I worked with Billy Case on the 17, and Herman Olson on the 17, which is in your book, at the bridge, and then the 12 was at the bridge, was the first fireboat in Tacoma.
Well, that's something I want to ask you now. Hank was on the 12 for
Hank
years.
Schoen was on the 12, and he did the turning of the Tacoma boats, the Indianapolis and the Tacoma boats.
I didn't know him then, but he was doing it when I used to ride back and forth.
That's right, and he was a lot of fun, boy. I'm still laughing when I think of some of the damn things that Hank Schoen did.
Well, he was a good skipper,
Oh,
too.
he was wonderful. We had a lot of guys at the boathouse, including Dummy, who was a boy that was deaf and dumb, and they fed him at the cook shack. And we all loved Dummy, and there's a lot of interesting things those days that should be printed, and I think Drew has them in the Foss scrapbook, which is, I saved all the writings out of the paper and all the interesting things that happened each day.
Well, he should have a lot of it.
Isn't that fun, though, to think that we ate and we slept and we worked and we never knew what a time clock was, and Walt Headwell would give us a thick set of cards, and we would be gone on the 18th for 30 days up in the, never think of anything or taking any time off. There was a lot of interesting things, but I sure want to help you with any one of them you want to know about, Joe.
Well, the part that you see, I was on a lot of dredging down in Tacoma, and I used to call the office there when, what was his name, the dispatcher, Rostad, no?
Oh, no, Walter Headwell.
Well, it was the next one.
The next, Walter Headwell was the dispatcher, and Oscar Iverson used to help him.
Yeah.
And Oscar was in the back, and Nels Magnuson, of course, was the big brains behind all the money and did all the hard work.
Well, it seems to me that Rostad was dispatching there when I called in for a while.
That's, Billy Case was the dispatcher.
Oh, okay.
And he did the hard work, and then he actually had run the 17 first, and he was the guy that sent the picture of you guys at the bridge.
Well, I'm getting mixed up on that. Case was the dispatcher that I called most when I was working there.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting.
It's interesting, and there's so many other things, that any of them that come up in your mind, Joe, I'll be glad to tell you we can put them down in writing. And for now, I've got to get that back at this road, and I'm going to say thank you a lot, Joe, for calling the November 7th, 1940, the day the bridge fell.
Okay, that's just fine.
And the two nurses that he charged for going across, I heard later, made it across, but I sure would put an ad in the paper and try to get their names, because they had a rough time, I'm sure.
That would be interesting. Well, now, you said when is this meeting is going to be down here that you're...
At Ivans on the River Road, December the 11th. They have lunch. All the old bus people are there.
I don't know. I'll probably have this finished so you could have one of these by then.
Oh, wouldn't that be nice?
I'll try to do that now.
That'd be interesting.
So that if you have something you can run it on down here.
Yeah.
If they would find it, they would like it too.
That's right. It's really, there's a lot of interesting things and stories about every one of those boats in there. And the interesting stories would be about like the Tug, the 15,
Yeah.
which had been the Fearless and the Fawn and the Falcon and all the Tacoma Tug and Barge tugs as well. And the story of the 18 is interesting. There were only 3 of those engines made. They were open-base Sumner engines made in Seattle. And it was a mess to work on because you got oil pimples from head to toe.
Oh.
It was really a mess. The 18 and the 16 was a tough one. It really ran for many, many years. You probably know all the guys on the 16.
Well, the 17 was up to all one winter with us dredging at Shelton.
Right.
Dick Franklin was on
It
that.
had the second nozzle on it and gave you a chance to wash them off when you were through. The 12 had the first nozzle, and that was the first fireboat at Tacoma.
Well, Dick had his wife up there, and I took her around, and she found an apartment. Dick didn't have a car there. And found an apartment, and they lived up there until they finished that job.
We towed out of the Skookum, and when you towed logs out of the Skookum in those days, you broke up more thick than
I'll tell you, I was amazed when I had my own boat and went in there and saw how crooked that was.
Yeah.
It surprised me.
We drug after logs over land on them couple of them points, and it was fun.
Well, I'll tell you, Mel, I can sure believe it because there's a trick to get out of there.
And I spent many an hour riding along with a peavy and a dog and a rope trying to lasso as many logs as I could the laugh was that Art Wickstrom, whose boy is Dr. Wickstrom in Tacoma, was on the Rosedale, and he's the one that gave us most of the log towing out of the Skookum and down Pickering Pass. It was a lot of fun to watch the bootleggers on Hartstein Island them days. That was the best place to buy moonshine in the country in the 20s.
I can believe it, yeah. Well, now, there's another thing you probably know about. When after Rainier went in, I was in on a lot of that work up there.
Sure.
And they were turning that liquor out there.
Sure.
And I went clam digging, probably 6 or 8 years after they had been going, and I never found any small clams. I found a big clam now and then, that was all.
That's it.
But it seems to me that Rainier had to pay some $13 million out to the oyster growers before they got through.
Just think of that.
Yeah.
But do we know how true that red liquor going down that line?
They killed everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was really not
The fact is, take Simpson, they liked that because it protected their logs. A tree that's couldn't beat.
The thing that was most interesting about those days, Joe, was that the fog was so thick. We would go from Tacoma to Shelton on just absolutely sheer whistle, and I'd say, "What's that, Art?" He'd say, "That's the concrete dock at Fox Island. What's the matter with you?" And we couldn't see 2 feet.
Now, this is one thing that absolutely amazed me. To see what those guys, how they could navigate by the whistle.
Absolutely, all the way. And I'd say, "What the hell is that?" He said, "That's the dock at Mamia, you dummy. Shut up, that's Eagle Island, And there was just a little passage through Eagle Island.
Yeah.
And you got through there, you were lucky.
That was a little passage.
Oh, yeah. And it was quite then I'd say, "What's that?" And he'd say, "Oh, hell, that's the Devil's Head. Long Branch, you can't miss. Taylor Bay. Shut up, that's Johnson's Point." Every time they had an answer. And Cap Olson ran a ferry from Taylor Bay over to Olympia. And I was with him one morning going across, and he was on his second quart of beer, and he said, "Just so foggy you couldn't see." And I said, "Gee, Cap," I said, what's going to happen?" He said, "Boy, you better shut up. If I have a wreck here, I got to answer to the government for what happened when I had this load going across." And that's how they navigated in the fog. They never had a bit of trouble.
I was on quite a bit of plow driving around downtown there on the flats.
Sure.
And it amazed me how those guys could hit right where we were going, and maybe we'd be going clear over there into that Hellebus waterway. Doesn't make any difference.
I was so lucky. My dad worked for Hards Construction in 1916, and he worked with John Tobiason.
Oh, John was a great guy.
Oh, you knew John.
Oh, he was the best saw filer in the country.
Best saw filer. And I said goodbye to John at the Lutheran Hotel, and he lived to be in his 80s. And was very interested in anything that happened right up to the end.
Well, didn't he have the Parkinson's disease?
Yes.
I quoted on John a few times after he retired, but
that's right.
It was really rough.
29 South Wyndham.
Yeah.
He lived in Oakland.
Yeah. looked him up a few times, but he was quite a...
Any other questions that come up, Joe, you bring sure and write them down, because we can answer them.
All right.
Freddie Stoner was running the store at Foss Company, and Freddie was very efficient. And all of a sudden one day he picked up a surplus catalog, and he showed it to Henry, and Henry said, we're in the surplus business. And they started buying boats and tugs and rope and pilot, and they really had a lot of fun in surplus. And I went to a few sales with Freddie. And I worked with Freddie in this little lunch counter when the Navy would come in the summertime.
There was one man, I've forgotten his name, and that way he was the boss down there in the yard when I was there, and he hired me to shoot off a bunch of piles there.
Thor Simon.
Thor
Thor
is all I knew him by.
Came from Norway and could do anything, and he lived at Old Hop when he died, and his family is still living.
Probably darn.
Yeah. Thor Simonson was bought in by Linus Berg on 19th and Adams Street. He brought him from Norway.
Well, I never did know his last name, but Thor is all I knew him by, but he was the boss down there and all the stuff. And I know you take shooting off those piles. I wanted to use not over 4 or 6 of dynamite because they had floating stuff around there. And they had some big piles there, and Thor said, oh, don't be afraid of it. He said, put it in play. And I said, okay, but you're taking the full responsibility for this.
Tony Berg was the carpenter, an old boy at the boathouse, and his boy Lawrence Berg and all the Berg family were part of it.
Well, I remember them, but I didn't know them, really.
Alfie and was the cook, and it was really fun to be around because it was like a family.
It would be that way, yeah.
And when the Foss Company caught fire and burned up, that was the beginning of the growth into the new era.
How much time have you got? This has been really fine, you know.
That's it. I just have to tell you that the reason Inger Tufte was the engineer, or the blacksmith in the blacksmith shop that straightened the wheels, and he only had one eye. And it was interesting how strong that one eye was. And he had converted the oil burner, the old furnace that kept the place warm, he converted it to oil. And one day, the oil piled up in there and exploded, and that's one of the reasons it caught fire.
Right, yeah. Well, you speak about one eye, Mel. I lost the sight of my right eye in 1941.
That's what you said.
It was a little hard on craning because I had to tell the guys they had to give me exact signals, but otherwise I never had a problem.
Inger Tufte lost all his money in 1929 stock crash, and nobody paid too much attention to that anymore because it's 60 years ago when the stock market went bust. A few dollars. The Scandinavian American Bank, of course.
Hey, my sister was a stockholder in that. Boy, she lost it. She never
Everybody was in the Scandinavian American Bank because it was the only one that would never fail.
Yeah.
And it was the first one.
Well, her husband was a doctor, and when he died, he left that stock to her. And by gosh sakes, they were going to assess her.
That's right.
And John Doerr in Seattle, who was attorney then, took her case, and he said, when he realized what it was, he said, this isn't going to cost you a dime.
And if you do Pacific First Federal, had some problems on 11th and Commerce Street, and the people had the doors locked, so that after a while on the Commerce Street entrance. But our friend owned the Crown Drugstore, and he had an elevator up to the bank, and he used to charge it $10 to get up to the bank.
Oh, that's something.
That was something. A lot of them got their money that way.
Now, you're going to mind having this on tape there.
I hope not. You probably have to